Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in crossover battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And we are starting our countdown to the Black Panther review episode by reviewing the movie that kind of started it all for Marvel, at least the modern Marvel films, Blade. We're going to be reviewing that one. It was their second movie that...
I was going to say, it really did start it for Marvel. I mean, not only was it their first successful film, but I think it was like the only, like the second theatrical released film that they had
Wide release.
made. Wide release, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true. And
the first being Howard the Duck, which was... dumb.
Yeah, Blade came out during this like great time where special effects were starting to catch up with what you could show on screen. And also, we had just gotten over a few horribly made comic book movies, and I'm referencing two DC films by the names of Batman and Robin and Steel, which came out a year prior to Blade.
No one saw Steel.
Everybody hated those two movies, and so they really took things in a new direction with this Blade film. It was a new approach to the material, and it's all the better for it.
It treated it seriously.
It did.
And it was stylized without being like over the top, like something like Batman Returns or something like that.
Right.
Which I like that movie, but it didn't treat its characters as seriously, I think. Or didn't treat like comic books, the source material, as seriously as Blade did.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into it later on in this episode. But before we get into the review, we're going to go over the latest comic book movie news for Marvel and DC, including the Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer, which debuted last week. We'll talk about the Avengers Infinity War Super Bowl TV spot that came out yesterday. Mm-hmm. Way to go, Eagles. Proud of you guys, even though you're not my team.
I just don't like the Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. Shazam started production last week, and we finally got our first plot synopsis going, which reveals some interesting tidbits that we'll talk about. And last but not least, the producers of the Gotham TV show on Fox are developing a new show based on Metropolis, and it's going to focus on Lois Lane and Lex Luthor, and it's going to be for the DC digital streaming service. So we'll get into that.
Yeah.
You don't sound too happy about that. We'll get into that. But before we get into the news, I'd like to give a very special shout out to a Mr. Dan Baker for giving the best answer of last episode's question of the week, which was, who has had the best adapted live action costume design out of all the Marvel and DC films? And he gave us the answer, Mystique, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer, but I just loved it. So it definitely got the No Prize award for this episode.
And he was referring to the Rebecca Romijn Stamos version, not like the Jennifer Lawrence clothed version.
I do like Rebecca Romijn's version of Mystique more than Jennifer Lawrence's, mainly because I think Rebecca Romijn's physique was a lot more intimidating. Yeah, it was more statuesque. She was just a lovely figure. And I think that kind of style of costume design should be applied for most female superheroes, I think.
What? No.
No? Fine. Okay.
In a way, it's kind of like the worst answer because it's kind of a terrible translation.
It is.
For a costume from the comic.
Well, I think at the time, Bryan Singer had an interview with Rebecca Romijn where they asked him, like, why is she naked? And basically their only answer was...
Because it's Rebecca Romijn Stamos.
Yeah, blue boobs sell, and we're trying to get teenage guys into the theaters.
Well, it worked.
It did work, and also I guess they didn't want to have to animate like her white dress that she wears typically.
Oh yeah,
because that's a lot of CGI work with when you have that kind of fabric. So
I did like Mystique, like in the first movie, especially the first X-Men film. She just had like this, the way Rebecca Romijn played her. I mean, she only had one line in the entire film. You're
right.
And it was just like so mysterious and so kind of intimidating for, like a naked woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I guess has its own kind of, is intimidating in its own kind of way, but
I feel like she could kick my ass.
Yeah, totally.
We got other answers as well, such as Deadpool and Red Skull, and I thought those were pretty good answers as well. Red Skull was more of a successful character design, maybe more than a costume kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because there was some special effects that were applied to his look as well to make him the way he does. But those are both great answers.
What's your favorite costume adaptation?
I don't know. When John Spees wrote into us and he said Deadpool, and I think personally I have to agree with that. I think the Deadpool costume, especially for the universe that it took place in, considering that the rest of the X-Men costumes were not...
They're all black leather.
Comic accurate.
Yeah.
Deadpool's costume was not only comic accurate, it was a great, I think, update on the look, and like with the CGIs kind of added this expressive emotiveness that really just worked. Like everything about it was pretty much perfect. So I think I have to agree with that answer. What about you?
Wonder
DC?
Woman.
Yeah.
Just because like I've always wanted to see her not just like in the bathing suit, just kind of like briefs kind of look, but I've always wanted to see her like in a Greek kind of skirt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I've always wanted that look for her, and we finally got it. And now it's in the comics. I just thought it was a really, really good like update, because they had just redesigned her update in the New 52 prior. You know, and they tried giving her pants, and then people didn't like that, so they gave her like the briefs look, and then it's like, okay, but you know, with the skirt, I think it works really well.
Yeah, the Amazonian skirt I think works best. Her initial look, I think, when she first debuted, she had a skirt. Yes.
Yeah. She had like a dress.
They just
it was a long skirt.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was a good answer. I guess, again, congrats to Dana Baker. Jonathan went ahead and drew you up a no prize.
So this Mystique stuff. Like, my wife listens to this podcast now. You're going to get me in trouble.
Jonathan drew you up a no prize, and he'll go ahead and post the whole time-lapse sketch-up of what he did for that as well. And we'll post that to our social media channels, including Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to win a no prize, go ahead and answer this episode's question of the week by reaching out to us on those platforms, and we'll go ahead and ask that question later on this episode.
Yep.
So let's get into the news. So the Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer debuted last week, and it was like in the middle of the workday, and you texted it to me, Jonathan, and I was not expecting it. Like, if anything, I would have expected it during the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So it came out of left field, and it was just amazing. I had to like stop what I was doing and just, take a quick walk, just because I was so pumped. I was so hyped. I think a lot of it had to do with the music and the special effects, both of which were just amazing in this trailer. I have to really...
The music really stood out to me, because like for Marvel films, I know like one of their criticisms is that their music isn't that memorable. Mm-hmm. There's no like John Williams Superman theme or Danny Elfman kind of Batman theme that, like really sticks with people.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something you could like whistle or hum on command.
Right.
With this theme, it sounds so cool. It sounds so like
I could hum the last Ant-Man theme song.
Oh, yeah.
Dun 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 dun.
Can you do the new one from the trailer?
Nope. I don't know. It was weird. It was like, it kind of reminded me of like a monster movie kind of thing.
Almost, yeah.
I don't know why I get that vibe, but I do. And just like the whole fantastical nature of the film, of what we're seeing here, of like these larger than life objects and stuff like that, it feels very monster movie-ish. Not like in terms of like a horror film, but in terms of like just a fantastical film.
I got something a little bit more like Spy in a way.
Yeah.
Caper kind of vibe from the song.
Just from the
music. Think it fit really well.
It did.
Surprisingly well.
Yeah.
And I really hope it's the music that they end up using in the movie.
Especially with the final title card that they showed when they showed the film's logo. Just the music fit so well.
Yeah.
So kudos to that. The trailer starts off with kind of a flashback to Civil War, and Ant-Man is asking the Wasp, Hope Van Dyne, whether or not she would have joined him if he asked her to go help Cap's cause. And she gives a pretty badass answer.
Yeah.
Like, her answer really solidifies her as this very capable superhero.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes sense because the Wasp is... in the comics, I would say she's almost more of a superhero than Hank Pym is. Like, Hank Pym has retired multiple times in the comics.
Yeah.
And
we're talking Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp.
Right.
Because this in the movie, it's Hope Van Dyne.
Yeah, and when I refer to Ant-Man and the Wasp, when I'm referring to the comics, I'm referring to Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym. And, of course, those aren't the characters in the movie. But, Scott Lang is a great Ant-Man, too, in the comics. But... And I would say he's almost a better Ant-Man in this movie than maybe even Hank Pym ever was in the comics.
You don't have to deal with all the issues and all the baggage that Hank Pym brings with him.
Right. Yeah. I'm really glad they really sidestepped over that. They really kind of like streamlined the character for the films, and I think he's all the better for it. I think he's such an exciting character. But anyway, the fact that she seems very capable makes me feel like she's going to be the Avenger that we've always wanted her to be, because again, she's played a much more prominent role in the Avengers than Hank ever did. I believe.
Yeah.
So So her answer was, if you asked me, you never would have gotten caught.
And I'm glad they're going this direction with it, because I really like the fact that Scott Lang is like this sort of he's a criminal, and he has these connections in the criminal world, and to keep him in that place, to keep him, it's a good like handicap for the character. He's in house arrest and he has that like ankle monitor on him. I think it's good for the character.
Yeah, and it keeps things interesting, especially when you have Paul Rudd in the lead role, because he comes across as like such a nice guy. And really the character of Scott Lang is a nice guy. He's just been, caught up in some unfortunate circumstances that have led down this path that he's been on. And it's just more interesting that way. Like, he is a hero, but he kind of always has like, a foot down the dark path.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good running conflict throughout the film. Like, they have to do this thing, but can he get back in time? And then of course, that he's not gonna be able to at least once. Then he's gonna like lose his family or something, or there's that threat of that. Right. So it's good. It's good for the character.
He's like the lovable loser that you want to root for.
Yeah.
I think we see here why he's not showing up in any of the material for the Infinity War Part 1 film. I think because it's possible that during the whole duration of that film, he's going to be on house arrest and not able to access the Ant-Man costume, nor able to fight crime and shrink and stuff like that.
It seems like a weak excuse, though, because I think if like the fate of the universe was in jeopardy, he would show up anyway.
Yeah, I think he would. But I haven't seen him in any of the promo material. I know he's in the film. Yeah. I've heard it's a very small part, and that Ant-Man plays a larger role in Avengers 4, which comes out in 2019.
Right.
So while he's under lockdown, Hope is telling him that they've been on the run, her and her father, Hank Pym, from the authorities, and they have this really nifty gag where they shrink down their office building. That is such a great gag.
I hope no one was in that building.
I would assume that nobody would be.
But like even like when he like lifts up the handle, which was awesome. It's already like pre-built
because like it looks like a vent shaft on top of the building when it's large, but then it becomes a handle. It's so cool. Yeah. Such good design.
But I guarantee you, like anything that was on a table, when he like tilted it to drag it along, just fell off that table. Just beakers and chemicals everywhere.
He's got it. He's Hank Pym. He's the master of this stuff.
He has a plan for everything.
A nice little touch was having the pigeon on top of the suitcase.
It just stayed on there.
That was just a really nice little touch. I don't know who's in the robe talking to them as they're walking to the van. I think it's Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but it looks like they're running away somewhere. We see this cool, nifty little, it looks like a spaceship. And I'm not sure if this spaceship is in the office building. It's indoors, and it's surrounded by all this high-tech gear. We see a giant Duracell battery that appears to be powering it on the far right. We see the spaceship later on, and I'm using the word spaceship loosely, but we see it later on in this trailer when it's shrinking and it's getting like to the size of like these dust mites. So I think they're exploring the microverse in this particular ship. I think that's what the word on the street is that it's like a microverse exploration pod.
It reminds me of like the sub-ship that the Atom uses.
It reminds me of the ship that they used in Inner Space from that movie with Dennis Quaid and Martin Short.
Yeah, it's a great film.
It's a great film. He shrinks down. We get our first look at Ghost, who is typically an Iron Man villain, but here she's an Ant-Man villain, and she has the ability to go intangible, kind of like the Vision. Its powers are very similar to the Vision, and I wonder if they're going to make reference to him during this film.
I actually think it's probably like a failed experiment of Bill Foster trying to replicate the Pym particles, but instead of like he's probably successful in shrinking down the size of subatomic particles, or
but not
like
shrinking
atoms,
the distance,
but not the bond that they have. Yeah, so
that would make sense. I like that they're using this villain for this movie because Hank Pym doesn't have, or Ant-Man, I should say, doesn't have the greatest rogues gallery. So I think borrowing the Ghost here was a good call. We see just the briefest of flashes of Lawrence Fishburne as Bill Foster, who is Goliath in the comics. And I wonder if he will do any size changing in this film. I don't think he will, because he doesn't look like he's in action shape.
No.
We'll say that. But either way, it's a nice inclusion to have him in the film, I think.
The third film was going to be called Ant-Man and the Wasp and Goliath.
There's a great shot of Ant-Man jumping on, I want to call him Anthony, but obviously it's not Anthony, because Anthony is sadly no longer with us. Even if he didn't get shot, the lifespan of an ant is only so long,
Yeah.
So I'm guessing we'll just call him Anthony Jr. or the third. It looks like there's a cool little car chase in this film that throws quite a few surprises your way, including the shrinking and enlarging van that kind of like shrinks underneath another car and then pops the car off of its back as it grows bigger.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty sweet move. It's interesting all the different ideas that they're bringing to the table in terms of shrinking and growing.
And what you could do with it.
And what you can do with it. They're getting really creative with it. And later on, actually the very last shot of this is, I think it's another car chase. I don't know if it's the same car chase, but they're looking for like things to throw at the motorcycle that's pursuing them. And so she throws out Hello Kitty Pez dispenser, which I don't know if that belongs to Cassie or not. It probably does. Why would they have it?
You could turn anything into a weapon. You know, they're showing that you could turn anything.
Exactly. It's so cool. There were nice little touches of that in the last film, but this looks like it's going to have like those visual gags that make everything so.
It's interesting that like Hope, like with her blasters, like she also has like a shrinking and enlarging blaster.
Yeah,
you know, there's so much you could do with that.
Yeah, it's so cool. We see that Giant Man is back later on. He's like standing next to a ferry. He's coming out of the water. He's going after Walter Goggins' character, who appears to be holding the briefcase / office building on the ferry. So that's pretty cool. I think Ghost looks cool. The car that I don't know who's driving this car, but it's like a purple racing car with yellow and red flames on it. I feel like that's got to be a Hot Wheel that they enlarged or something like that. Or at least a car that they shrunk to disguise as a Hot Wheel.
Right.
Because it's just so over the top in terms of its design.
I don't remember seeing that. There's so much in this trailer.
It's a dense trailer.
It's a really dense trailer.
Yeah.
It makes me think it's going to be like a really dense movie as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens.
The biggest moment of the trailer, I think the big money shot is when after Cassie tells Scott that, you can use a partner, we see the Wasp in action for the first time, kicking ass. It looks like she's fighting in a kitchen, and she's growing in size, kicking these dudes' butts. One of them starts throwing butcher knives at her, and there's this sweet slow motion move where she's spinning midair, and the knives are flying past her. She unleashes the wings, and then she starts like running alongside one of the knives that are being thrown at her.
That guy has really good aim.
Not only does that guy really have good aim, he could throw those knives really fast because it's like this is in slow motion, and those butcher knives, are flying like one right after the other. So it's a little improbable in terms of that, but it's such a cool effect.
Yeah,
I really want to see this movie in 3D. What were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be really cool in 3D. I wonder who these henchmen belong to. Probably Walter Goggins.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I feel like there's definitely like a business kind of conflict going on. So it would make sense if people, were henchmen for the businessman.
Yeah, that makes sense. After we see the wing scene, we go back to Scott and Hank, and he's like, "Oh, you gave her wings and blasters? You probably just didn't have that tech for me." He's like,
"No, I did.
No, I didn't." Such a great moment.
Of course.
The first time I saw that,
I laughed.
Laughed out loud for sure.
We saw that tech in the last film when we saw the Wasp. She had wings.
Right. Yeah, in the 60s.
So of course he had that. He's had it for a while.
Yeah, so it's like, why didn't he give it to him? Well,
because he loves his daughter.
Because he loves his daughter more.
Yeah.
Maybe resources are limited or something like that. There's a great shot right before the title card where we see the Wasp and Ant-Man flying through this small crack in the wall. It's cool to see them actually like flying and shrunk next to each other as like a unit, as a team. Can't wait to see this movie. It's a very strong contender for one of the Brothers Awards, like best of.
It's still the beginning of the year.
I know, and it's only the beginning of the year, but it's such a great trailer. I love it so much.
It was a really great trailer.
It did its job.
I thought it was better than the Infinity War Super Bowl spot.
Well, it was longer.
It was a lot longer.
The Infinity War Super Bowl spot was only 30 seconds, but it showed a lot more new stuff than I thought it was going to. I was like not even anticipating that they were going to show any new footage. I thought it was all going to be rehashed from the first trailer that we got a few months ago. So the fact that it was like new stuff was exciting. I mean, there wasn't many reveals here, but at least it was all new to look at. There's an interesting shot. So it starts off, we see Tony and Doctor Strange and Peter all standing next to each other.
It's hard to understand what Robert Downey Jr. is saying there.
Yeah, he says something like, it's all come down to this. I don't know what he says. He kind of mumbles, which kind of annoys me.
Yeah.
But the next shot we see is Wanda doing something with Vision's mind gem.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's the one that gives him the body that he has, the more humanoid-looking body. It's possible because it looks like she can...
It has to be her.
She can manipulate him in some ways that are unclear. We saw in Civil War that she was able to manipulate Vision's density.
Yeah.
Because she made him super dense and he fell through like multiple layers of the Avengers compound. And that was so that she could escape. It's unclear as to what extent she could actually manipulate him and his powers and his body and everything like that. She does look concerned for him, which is interesting. I'm still really curious as to how they're going to treat Thanos' acquisition of the Mind Stone and what's going to happen to Vision after that. I hope he sticks around. I'm pretty sure he's going to, because I think he's been
That's a big player to
for
take
Avengers
off the
4.
table.
Right, exactly. And I just love the character. So later on, we see the Guardians of the Galaxy. We see teenage Groot. He's like on some kind of like portable device. It looks like a smartphone. Teen Groot is such an aloof teenager. Like he's not even paying attention to it all. He's just glued to his phone.
Yeah. Overall, I think like the TV spot had a really kind of somber tone. Like, it was very different from Ant-Man.
Well, same thing with the trailer too. The marketing for this film is very somber. They're really playing it off as a very serious movie.
Usually Marvel films are marketed as like, being really, really fun.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is going to turn some people off. Like, did this trailer excite people?
I think so, yeah. I think
it's exciting to see
a lot
the
of people.
characters like side by side together. For me, like that,
it didn't
have as big an effect on me as I thought it would.
Well, I saw this with like 10 other people there
at
the Super Bowl event I was at, and they were all super excited.
Were they like, yeah, Avengers, I can't wait.
No.
Or they were like, oh, Avengers.
Yeah, which is just as good. I mean, it was still wonder and awe. Like, there were no laughs, if that's what you're saying. Like, it wasn't a funny preview like a lot of the other Marvel previews have been. Mm-hmm. I think one of the greatest shots was when Peter was riding on that ring structure that's floating above Manhattan. And he's wearing his standard costume, the one from Homecoming. It's not his new one. So it looks like he revisits this later when he gets Tony's upgrade. But he takes off his mask, and the kind of vertigo that the shot gives you as you're looking down onto Manhattan, which is like 3 miles down, and he's just like holding on for dear life.
Oh, he's
basically
going into space.
Yeah, it looks like he's about to go into space. It's pretty exciting. We see a good shot again of Captain America and Black Widow still hate her hair or her lack of eyebrows. I don't know which it is. I guess her hair's fine. It's just her lack of eyebrows that throws me off. One of the other big reveals that in this trailer was Cap's new shield. It's a Wakandan shield that straps to his arm. He has 2 of them, one on each arm. And we saw in the last trailer, in the first trailer, that he was running, and I said he had like these battle gauntlets on. I didn't know those were like Wakandan shields. They're kind of like this oblong diamond shape.
Yeah,
which is a traditional shield shape for African tribes around that area. Like the Kenyan, the Maasai tribe.
Yeah, theirs is like a.
If you look at the Kenyan flag,
it has the
Maasai shield on there, and it's this like pointy oval thing. Mm-hmm. So it's cool that's what the shape is. I mean, it's not his typical round shield and everything like that, but I am fully convinced that he's going to have that again by the end of this movie. But in this movie, every character is almost in kind of like a state of flux. Coming off the back of Thor Ragnarok and Civil War, it really shook things up, those 2 films.
Yeah.
So here, this movie, they're fighting in that kind of limbo state, and at the end, I think everything's really going to come back together to the status quo, and where they kind of like unite to continue the fight.
So like Captain America or Steve Rogers as Captain America again?
Yeah, I think Steve Rogers is going to be Captain America again, and he's going to have his shield again. I don't think he's going to stick with this Wakandan shield, but it'll be cool to have it, while it's around. It's a nice little change of pace, I think. Okay, this reveal that I did not see until I watched the trailer back in slow motion, but Iron Man has his bleeding edge armor in this movie. As he's taking off his sunglasses, you see his armor forming around him, but in particles, like nanobites. I don't know if it's going to be stored within his body like it is in the comics, or what's going to happen. If he's going to be able to do
that. That's so dumb.
If he's going to be able to form it into like clothing like he did in the comics. But he's going to have some kind of mechanism, maybe on one of his articles of clothing, that unleashes the nanotech that surrounds his body. It looks really cool. I can't.
Well, it's like, I mean,
and it's good that he gets this upgrade because Black Panther
has that.
He has a nanotech suit, and
I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that, like, Black Panther had something,
Unique.
one thing over like Iron Man, just to show how like, technically advanced their nation is.
I don't know if Wakanda's scientists are more advanced than Tony Stark, though. You would think that they're about even. I don't know. It's hard to say. I think they're setting it up so that Shuri is the smartest person on Earth, and like Stark is number 2. But I do like to see them at least like close in terms of intelligence, because Iron Man to me is the tech hero. He should always have the latest and greatest tech. To me, Black Panther, the tech that he has always comes secondary to his skill as a fighter and his stealth and things like that. So it looks cool. It's interesting. Can't wait to see the bleeding edge armor. There's a cool like little team up moment where Doctor Strange is like casting the spell, and Iron Man flies through it. I don't know what it does to the spell.
I don't know if he flies through it. I thought he flew like past it.
No, he flies through it. Like as he flies through it, it's like breaking up the glyphs, kind of. So I don't know if he's
Dr. Strange, you ruined my spell.
I don't know if he's ruining the spell or if he's like enhancing Iron Man's repulsors somehow with like magic energy or something. I don't know, but it's pretty cool. I can't wait to see that. And then, of course, the spot ends with the same shot that the trailer ended in, which is Captain America, Black Panther, Bucky, Black Widow, Okoye, Hulk, War Machine, Falcon, and the rest of the Wakandan army rushing toward the camera. And it's a great shot. So, oh no, I'm sorry. The very last shot of it is Thanos' face.
I was going to say, I don't remember seeing that in this Super Bowl spot.
Yeah, it's Thanos' face, and
it's scarred.
It's scarred. It looks cool. The special effects are amazing. It almost looks real.
I thought the same thing about Steppenwolf for a while.
Yeah, but this is Marvel, so it's going to be good.
Whatever. We'll see.
Yeah, his face is scarred. He has like 3 slashes down, but I think he has symmetrical slashes down the other side, so they might not be scars, and they might just be part of his alien facial wrinkles thing. Whatever I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, looks good. And that's it for the Marvel news. Tell us about DC.
So this was released pretty recently. I guess Shazam started production
last week.
Yeah. They released the official synopsis for the film, which breaks down the entire cast list, which we already know. But also it just kind of sets up like what seems to be like a pretty fun film.
Yeah, it sounds fun. Why don't you read the synopsis?
Okay. We all have a superhero inside of us. It just takes a bit of magic to bring it out. In Billy Batson's case, by shouting out one word, Shazam, the streetwise 14-year-old foster kid can turn into the adult superhero Shazam, courtesy of an ancient wizard. Still a kid at heart, inside a ripped, godlike body, Shazam revels in this adult version of himself by doing what any teen would do with superpowers. Have fun with them. Can he fly? Does he have X-ray vision? Can he shoot lightning out of his hands? Can he skip his social studies test? Shazam sets out to test the limits of his abilities with the joyful recklessness of a child, but he'll need to master these powers quickly in order to fight the deadly forces of evil controlled by Dr. Thaddeus Savannah. And it's setting it up as a comedy.
It is, yeah. Like a fun action comedy.
Yeah.
It does answer several important questions, including what type of Billy Batson are we going to get? Are we going to get like the G. Willikers kid, or are we going to get like the punk from the streets?
The asshole version. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest takeaway is these deadly forces controlled by Dr. Savannah. I think the villains, and I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, are going to be the 7 deadly sins.
What do you mean? Did that happen in the comics?
Yeah. Like, one of the things that the wizard Shazam, and I think his name is going to be Shazam also in this film.
Yeah,
the director confirmed that.
So what's Billy Batson's? When he's in a superhero form, what is he going to be called?
I think it's Shazam. I think he takes up the mantle of Shazam.
Okay.
If the wizard doesn't die, I don't know. He may. He almost becomes like a Force ghost, I think, in a way. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route for this film.
Yeah.
But he sort of takes up that mantle of Shazam. And one of the wizard's like biggest feats was actually capturing like the 7 deadly sins and entrapping them within the Rock of Eternity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like they're like these personified, almost like demons, and they like whatever people there are around them, whatever like their sin is, like they bring that out in those people. So if Wrath walks down the street, there's just gonna be like people just like beating the shit out of each other and trying to kill each other.
Are these 7 deadly sin characters, are they humanoid or are they like monsters?
It's a monstrous kind of humanoid form.
Okay. We haven't heard anything regarding casting as far as those characters, right?
No, I wouldn't be surprised if they're CG, I guess.
Yeah.
But the fact that, they're backed by a live action villain, Dr. Savannah,
Mark Strong, yeah.
I think is going to be fantastic. I think this is going to present a really good, sort of structured kind of narrative. He has to defeat all of these different sort of sins in a way, especially being a teenager and he has all these friends. One of them's going to be a lusty perv, and one of them's going to be angry, and one of them's going to be really prideful. So I think it'll be fun. It seems like it's going to be pretty fun. I'm really happy with the synopsis.
I really had my heart set on Black Adam being the villain, and when they revealed that it wasn't going to be a few months ago, I was kind of disheartened because to me, Dr. Savannah didn't seem like a great villain, but the fact that he's going to be fighting these 7 deadly sin characters makes it seem like a worthy replacement for Black Adam.
It's someone to punch,
Right.
Because you can't punch Dr. Savannah. It's like Superman punching Lex Luthor. You can't do that, as Superman Returns showed us.
Right.
So the fact that he's going to have someone, formidable to take on is great news. If it can't be Black Adam, this is the next best thing.
Yeah. It should be exciting. I want to see what they do with it and see if it affects the DC universe as a whole in any way, I think.
This makes sense for this character.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to make Shazam a comedy.
Yeah.
To me.
Just because of the nature of it. It's big. It's the movie Big with superpowers.
Exactly. The other bit of DC news we have is apparently the producers of Gotham are developing a Metropolis show for the DC digital streaming service that's focused on Lois Lane and Lex Luthor.
Nobody is asking for this.
Exactly. Not even me. Okay, so I haven't watched all of Gotham, so I'm not sure how good it is right now.
It's Batman's universe taking place before Batman even shows up.
Right.
That's kind of the problem I have with the Gotham show.
I have a feeling they would probably do the same thing for Metropolis. Metallo shows up before, Superman's there or anything like that.
And you already have a show about Superman that doesn't have Superman in it. You're going to have Krypton and you have Supergirl.
Yeah. Now you're going to get one more. I don't understand why DC is doing this. It's if you're going to do a TV show about Superman, people are going to want to see Superman. If you're going to do a show about Batman, people are going to want to see Batman. That's why they're watching the show.
No one wants to see a show about Lois Lane's journalistic adventures.
I mean, I think you could do a successful journalism show. I mean, look at shows like Newsroom and stuff like that.
People want to see superheroes. That's why they buy DC Comics. Right?
Yeah, it's
so dumb. I want to go into the DC exec room with a DC comic book and just hold it in front of their faces and be like, you see this? This is what you do. This is what you do. And just shove it in their face and just smearing it around their face. Jeez. And they're screaming. And I'm like, you idiots. You idiots. Yeah, they're screaming. And then I roll it up and then I just kind of put it in their throat. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Just eat it until you memorize it. Memorize it. Do this.
You need psychiatric help.
Yeah, maybe. They're making bad decisions.
I don't understand why it seems to me like they think that you can't do a Batman show or you can't do a Superman show. I don't understand why.
Well, because you have the movies coming out and that's another thing. You don't want to do that either, Jonathan, because then you have multiple realities to keep track of.
They already do that with The Flash.
Well, that's dumb. They shouldn't be doing that. You're going to use up all your good content of the character on the TV show and not have it for the movie. Do characters that you're not actively developing films for but are interesting enough,
IGN came out with this really good article today, a really good opinion piece column, saying that there are too many DC shows, television shows.
It's probably true.
And I'm definitely there where it's my time is valuable to me and I can't dedicate so much of it to
you can't watch
television shows. Everything that's on CW right now, they just added Black Lightning. It's a lot, especially if it's not good. I haven't been keeping up with Flash and Arrow, but I've heard that this is for both of the shows, their worst seasons ever. It's I can't afford to waste my time on shitty shows. And now that streaming service,
Exactly.
and technically shows like Preacher and Lucifer are also DC shows that I haven't seen a single episode of one of those.
Yeah.
I heard Preacher is actually pretty good. Actually, I heard good things about Lucifer as well.
Yeah.
But it's so much. I want shows that I want to see, and Metropolis is not a show that I want to see.
It should be quality over quantity. Yeah. Just have like 3 shows, maybe 4 max, and make sure they're really good shows about characters that you don't actively have in movie development. That's what you got to do.
And that bugs me too. This whole thing with like one of my favorite aspects of the Arrow show was Deathstroke, and I guess they can't use him on that show anymore because of they're introducing him into the cinematic universe.
Yeah,
and that confuses the shit out of me. How you can have a Flash show and a Flash movie, but you can't do Deathstroke.
Yeah,
it's like, why not?
Well, because they didn't plan ahead. I don't know what they're doing.
It's just, no, you don't even need to plan ahead for that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, it's fine to have both of them.
Yeah. Do you think if they make this show, this Metropolis show, do you think that the DC streaming service will be DOA?
No, absolutely not. Not with Young Justice season 3, and not with the Titans show.
They're gonna have to cancel some CW shows then, I think, or consolidate them. I don't know what they're gonna do.
I kind of hope they. One of the things in IGN's article also said, like, how valuable is a streaming service when they could get DC content elsewhere?
Right.
And I kind of, agree with that too.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm asking.
Maybe move everything to the streaming service. It'll definitely make it more valuable, for people who still like shows like Arrow and stuff like that. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe you lose out on a ton of ad revenue, being on the network station.
Yeah, but what do you gain in subscribers and subscriber revenue,
Yeah.
It's a valid question, and I think that brings us to our question of the week. What original series would you like to see DC develop next for the upcoming DC streaming service?
Right. What do you want to see?
God, there's so much.
I'm interested if anyone really wants to see this Metropolis show.
I don't.
I think it could be good, but that doesn't mean I want to see it. There's a difference between like something being good, because like I'm sure Preacher is good. I have no way of seeing it. I might, otherwise I might. I don't know. I'm definitely curious to see what people want to see.
Yeah. I mean, there's like New Genesis. Make a show about New Genesis.
Oh my gosh.
Don't make a show about
New Gods?
Yeah, don't make a Krypton show. Like we have Superman shit.
I want to see Darkseid.
Like The Question, Birds of Prey, that was a great show. Bring it back. You're not working with those characters. Do a JSA show. Do a freaking Legion of Superhero show. DC has so much content that they could be doing, and they're just fucking up.
Well, the Legion of Superheroes is on Supergirl right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
They have like Saturn Girl and Brainiac 5.
Well, do a show about that then.
Well,
and not
they are.
well, I mean, like their own show.
Oh, their own show.
And not Metropolis. Nobody wants to see that shit. Are you ready to switch over to Marvel yet?
No, fuck off.
You're not sufficiently annoyed with DC yet?
No. I mean, it's just I don't know what the answer is. Like, do they consolidate their shows? I mean, Watchmen is about to be on HBO. It's like, how many networks and stuff do I have to subscribe to watch all this content?
This is what you do.
Even if I wanted to.
You cancel the Flash and the Arrow. You put those characters into movie development. Flash already being there. You keep Legends of Tomorrow on CW and Black Lightning on CW and Supergirl. Keep those as your 3 DC shows. And then move everything else over to the streaming service.
Okay, well, what about Lucifer? What about Gotham?
No one cares about those shows.
The people do.
Okay. All right. First of all, Lucifer, I don't consider that a superhero show, so...
It's not a superhero show. It's a comic book show.
Yeah, whatever. But Gotham, just cancel Gotham too, because it's just... It shouldn't exist. Cancel Krypton too while you're at it. Yeah.
Ugh. It's like the one space show that they have.
Well, make a new Genesis show then.
I hope Krypton is good. I hope Krypton is like, it could be like Game of Thrones. But then again,
it could be like Gotham, where you start having all these Superman bad guys in a show in which Superman does not exist.
I never wanted to know about like Superman's lineage. As interesting as it may be. There are other things I would rather see, and I'll save that for the next episode.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. With all that ranting aside, I think I blacked out for a second there, too. We'll go ahead and get into the main event of this episode, which is our review of Blade. Let's do it. Love that scene. Love this movie. I've been really excited to review this film for a long time because not only is it, one of the best early Marvel movies, it's one of the best vampire movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably one of the best Wesley Snipes movies. It just holds a lot of trophies in terms of, the best.
Yeah.
Best Blade movie, I think. I mean, it's sometimes a toss-up between Blade and Blade 2. But I think most cases, Blade 1 beats out Blade 2, despite...
Blade 2 is like a better horror film. This one is a better...
Action film?
Action film? Yeah.
And it's a great introduction to the character. They really updated him from the comic books. And
oh, yeah.
I
based
think
on the profile you gave last week?
Yeah.
They really improved him, I think.
David Goyer made some fantastic choices. And I heard that he was really the one that fought for the serious take on this character. And he brought in the ideas for Blade's powers and weapons that really changed him. Because in the comics, Blade wasn't a half vampire. He was like more of an everyman in terms of his personality and things like that. And he had these like wooden teak knives that he would use to stake vampires.
Not silver.
And he was immune to the being turned into a vampire when bitten, but that was the extent of everything. David Goyer turned him into a half vampire, a Dampier, as we discussed in the last episode. And, he gave him all these tricked out weapons and things like that. And the character is all the better for it. They later changed the character 1 year later after this movie came out in the comics, where he was bitten by Morbius and, got the powers of the vampire. So kudos to David Goyer and kudos to Stephen Norrington, who I think really sells this film.
He had a vision for this film.
He did.
It's really, really evident.
It was a super stylish shooting style, the likes of which I've never really seen since.
Right.
His direction, and I think certain other aspects like his diverse casting and things like that. The fashion, I think a lot of it felt very progressive, very ahead of its time.
It was very ahead of its time in terms of like the whole, like wearing a dark black trench coat, leaping across,
rooftops the likes of which has been copied by Matrix, Underworld,
and even like dodging bullets and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, hugely influential.
Yeah,
on the action genre. I think more than most people give it credit for
sure.
But I think what really makes this film great above anything else is its mature approach to the material. Like I said, like a year before we got films like Batman and Robin and Steel, and those were just god-awful and so campy. And this kind of like forewent all of that in terms of actually taking the material seriously.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising in a way that like Marvel's first successful film was also a rated R film.
Yeah, I mean... Like, if you think about the most successful films before this, it was probably Superman the movie and the
Batman.
1989 Batman movie.
That's
those films took those characters seriously, just like how this one did. Blade is a darker, more violent character, so the film is inherently more mature, but the approach is the same. And so I think at that point, it really taught the movie creators the lesson that you got to take the material seriously.
Yeah. And I think they did for the most part following this. Yeah. I mean, I think in a way this like kind of convinced the studio, because this was made at New Line. This was essentially made at Warner Brothers. This kind of convinced Warner Brothers of, like a more serious take on Batman.
Yes. Which is why we got Batman Begins and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it flipped it all on its head, Blade. Like the Marvel movies that came right after it, which were X-Men and Spider-Man, they totally ditched the camp and just went for it. Like, take the comics, put it on the screen for the most part.
Right.
In terms of tone, at least.
Even you have to think like with like the X-Men films, the costume designer, and they're like, oh, what do we do for the X-Men costume? Oh, look at Blade. Look what he's wearing.
Black leather. Go for that. Yeah. Maybe it had too much influence. But it was definitely an influential film. The style of the film, I think, is the second best thing it has going for it. It's very surreal, I think is the best word I could describe it. Almost dreamlike. It's like surreal and dreamlike, but also very hyper real. Like with the crazy angles and the speed ramping and the kind of, I guess, it's like a monochromatic lighting, but with splashes of super saturated color.
I was going to say, like, some of those city shots look like they're almost black and white.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like reality, which makes it feel supernatural, which is perfect for, this genre of film, this vampire film,
Yeah.
It's just super fitting. I do have to say, though, the surreal nature of the film, great as it may also be the film's biggest detriment, because at no point in the film did I ever feel like there was really like a reality outside of this conflict that existed between the vampires and Blade. Like, all the characters that existed outside of Blade's war and Frost's plan, they felt like they were merely servicing the story, like puppets or something, you know? Especially the House of Erebus elders. Like, they weren't villains.
Oh my gosh.
They weren't even characters. They were just plot devices, you know? And
yeah, I mean, we saw this movie recently, and it had been a long time since I had seen this. I don't remember the vampire elders being as lame as they were. They were really, like, not good characters.
no. And same thing goes for, like, the people in the city. Like, what city is this? Like, how does a guy dressed like Blade fire shots, and he did this multiple times, in broad daylight without, like, a huge reaction from the surrounding public?
I don't think he fired shots. He aimed his gun.
Oh, he aimed his guns at the familiar, but he also shot at Frost at the park.
That's right.
When the little girl was thrown into the street and Blade saved her. So
the little girl that was completely a stunt woman when she landed on the street.
Exactly.
She, like, grew, like, twice as big.
Yeah. So, like, at no point do I ever believe that this is reality, which I think, I mean, this is the type of the film that doesn't really care outside of anything outside the main plot.
It doesn't need to be anything other than what it was. I mean, the film was definitely more dated than I remember.
Yeah. Very 90s.
I have to wonder, like, how much, like, you know, we're in this golden age of superhero films right now. Like, and how well are any of these films going to age?
That's a good question. I think this one has held up very well, though, for being, wow, like 20 years old.
Almost.
It
19.
Came out in 98.
Oh.
So it's 20 years
this year.
old.
It's 2018, people.
Jeez. That's crazy.
Ugh.
But for being 20 years old, it holds up. I think it holds up pretty well. It still feels pretty modern. I think because at the time it was made, it felt very postmodern.
Yeah.
So I still like it a lot. I think if they brought Blade back today, whether it's in the MCU or on Netflix or whatever, I think what they would do to improve upon this they would make him feel more like a real character in a real setting. And I think they would definitely do it better than Blade Trinity did when that movie tried to show the repercussions of the real world, you know? God, that was such a bad movie.
I barely remember it.
Well, in Blade Trinity, he shoots a familiar, but they set him up for murder, basically.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that felt really it felt really weird.
Because Blade, in these two movies, the first two movies, he really does exist in his own world.
No consequences.
Right, exactly.
Then all of a sudden, like, Blade is practically, like, on trial for murder. And that's like,
Yeah.
He's not, but, like, he might as well be.
Yeah, he's taken to the police station and stuff. It's so
Right.
stupid. What do you think of the modern adaptation of vampire mythology that they had here?
I know it was definitely, like, an update in the sense that, like, prior to this, vampires hadn't been depicted that way. Like, you think of, like, Interview with the Vampire and stuff like that. They're very, like, almost like Victorian and
Old fashioned. Yeah.
And in this one, they're like mobsters in a way. Like, they're the underground.
Right. But they're very modern. They're very cool, very stylish. They're almost
They're
like
sexy.
Yeah.
And I think they've always kind of been, but this was definitely, like, the most modern interpretation of them that, like, we had seen to date.
Yeah.
And I think that this version still holds up a lot. Like, you were mentioning, like, Underworld.
Yes.
You know, like, those vampires were totally ripped off from the Blade vampires from this film.
Pretty much exactly that. David Goyer had some great ideas to bring them into the 21st century.
Yeah, prior to that, you know, you would think of like the old Universal version of Dracula.
Right, exactly,
you know?
with the capes and turning into bats and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. So let's get into the characters.
Yeah.
So Blade, Wesley Snipes, as far as I'm concerned, was born in a comic book. Him and his stunt double. The way Wesley Snipes moves, the guy does not miss a beat. Every move is razor thin perfect. Like, you could screenshot, like, almost any frame of him and make it a splash page on a comic book, I feel.
Yeah, it's like a frame from a comic.
This is him at his prime, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This film, for sure.
For sure.
But as cool as his superhuman and otherworldly his performance is, his character is pretty one note in this film. You have to be honest. Like, he's kind of a very empty character for the most part, just living for the war. But I do like how Snipes infuses Blade with like small little brilliant touches of personality, like his fist gesture that he makes when he stakes Quinn to the wall. Like, he has a sense of humor, you know, or like the look.
I don't know if that was intentional to be intentionally humorous.
You don't think so? No. I think it was. I think he's like, yeah, I got it. But he also had like kind of an emotional moment when Whistler was dying near the later part of this movie.
Yeah.
You could tell that it really affected him. So
it's a subtle performance.
It is subtle. It definitely is. Like, he tells Whistler, he's like, we could treat the wounds. You know, that kind of gets me because you know that there's a lot being unsaid at that moment, and it's being portrayed mostly through his acting, which I thought was pretty good at that part. There is a depth to this character that doesn't come out a lot, not because it doesn't exist, I don't think, but because I don't know. Maybe like Blade feels there's no time for any of that. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It's definitely just not Wesley Snipes being Wesley Snipes,
right?
Because you know we've seen him in other films where you know he's definitely more human, I guess, as opposed to like being like really robotic like Blade is. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at a film like Tu Wong Fu or something like that. You know,
he's in drag.
Yeah, and it's you know, and you compare that to like his performance here, and it's definitely it's very technical. I feel like
it is. He knows that vampires are out there killing people and he needs to stop them. So I think he feels like there's no time for any sort of anything else, really.
Yeah.
So he kind of consumes his entire life. But also, he does enjoy killing vampires.
Yeah.
You definitely see that side of him as well. So that's really what he lives for. He's an interesting character.
He likes doing it stylishly. Just like, you know, like standing there and just, you know, striking fear and then acting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Whistler. Chris Christopherson is just badass. It's such a strange pairing to team him up with Wesley Snipes' Blade, but they're such an odd couple that it works. Because Wesley Snipes is like this like robotic, like leather clad, sunglass wearing, sword wielding badass, and he's like an old biker guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it works though. Like I don't think I've seen Christopherson in anything else. But I like to think that he's this badass in real life. Like, when he fills up his car at the gas station, he's spilling, and he's also smoking a cigarette. He's really good in this film.
I don't think he's been in anything else like this role, but it suits him so well. Like, I'm surprised he wasn't, like, typecast after this as sort of just, you know, like, the gruff kind of mentor.
Well, he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I think he's been a biker before, I'd have to think. He kind of rolled with the country western Easy Rider crowd, I think.
Yeah, I loved like the little moments of like you know like humor he interjects and stuff, and he's not like a humorous character, but like you know when Wesley Snipes is like it's still heavy, he's like, but you're so big, you know. It's just great little moments like that. Yeah, like if this film has you know comic relief, it's Whistler's character and you know and also Quinn. Frost's henchman, but also you know when he's not around, it's Whistler.
Yeah, definitely.
And he also provides you know he's just a great like expository character too.
Oh, definitely.
You learn a lot from him. You learn a ton from him.
You learn all about vampires, and you learn all about Blade's origin from him.
And it's like effortless too. You know,
it doesn't feel like exposition the way he gives it.
Right.
For sure. Definitely. So Deacon Frost. Let's talk about Stephen Dorff.
He's a really good villain. Like Stephen Dorff did a fantastic job playing this villain because like you almost like him, but he's still like a really just strong villain.
He's probably the most likable villain in any Marvel movie ever. Maybe Loki takes a run at him for that, but he's extremely likable. He's just it's because he's so cool. He's like
smarmy.
He might be the coolest portrayal of any character in any movie ever. He's just super chill with like, you know, he has the perfect hair and, you know, that devil may care attitude. Just, you know, the smirk, the clothes. His eyes are like super scary.
And yeah, they are scary. His face, I mean, as cool looking as he is, yeah, you're definitely intimidated by him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And cigarette smoking, he makes me want to take up smoking cigarettes. How cool he is. Don't do that, kids. Surgeon General tells you not to.
But no, he was definitely like one of my favorite parts of this film. Just, having all these Marvel films to compare this film to. I agree. He's definitely like one of the best villains that Marvel has ever put on screen.
Definitely. And they almost gave him his own movie like 5 years ago. They were talking about it.
That's right.
Because I definitely think this is Stephen Dorff's best character that he's ever played. I think he was eager to revisit it.
I'm not even sure what other films he's played in.
He was like in Deuces Wild or something. He's like a...
This whole film is kind of like what happened to all the actors that were in this film? Like, I've never seen the girl since. I don't even know the actress's name.
In Boucher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen her again either, but she was really good. Real quick to go to Deacon Frost, back to Deacon Frost before we get into Karen Jensen.
Right.
I like how his character was such a contrast to the more robotic Blade.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, like, Frost's mission is just as important to him as Blade's is, but Frost never lost his sense of humor.
No.
It was just...
he seemed almost like more real in a way than Blade.
Yeah.
Like, Blade was removed from humanity. Like, Deacon Frost definitely, like...
He's almost more human than...
It's almost like someone you know.
The vampire. Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, he takes a sword and he flips it up and he throws it around and he catches it around and he's like, yeah, shut the fuck up. And it's just like, oh, that's me.
You don't get it, man. He, like, the things he does, like, he's throwing stuff at you and he's, like, slashing you. Yeah, uh-huh, okay, yeah, get it done. So good. His repertoire with, is that the right word? Repartee? I don't know. That he has with Quinn is just so fantastic. Every time those two are having a conversation... The movie is just a comedic genius.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Not even for what they're saying, but just how they're saying it. So Karen Jensen, I think in Boucher Wright, she serves her purpose as the POV character. I do like her, but among everything that's happening, we never really get to know her. And I think ultimately, though she does serve as a sort of gateway into which we, the audience, enter this bizarre supernatural vampire world, I wonder if the movie would have been fine without her.
No, you needed her.
Yeah,
she is the POV character. She is, she is this damsel in a way that Blade needs to save. I don't know how the film would have worked without her.
It's a unique approach that no other superhero film has ever taken, where we are introduced to the main superhero character and everything through the damsel in distress character. She is a damsel in distress, but she's also super intelligent and capable on her own.
She's super capable.
She grows as a character throughout this.
She really helps their cause. She really contributes.
Yeah.
And it's strong. And even when she is captured, she doesn't take shit from anybody.
Yeah. It's funny when she calls Deacon Frost an STD.
Yeah.
That was great.
It's just his reaction.
Yeah. So, I do think that you could have had a Blade film without her. But I think that this approach that they took by having her be the POV character just makes it so much more interesting.
You absolutely can't have a Blade film without her. Look at the next two films.
Yeah.
They didn't really have damsel characters.
But in terms of the approach to an origin film.
Oh,
is what I'm saying. In every origin film, the hero is the main character. This is an origin film where the hero is not necessarily the main character. Right. It could be argued that, I think.
And and it's really one that, it's definitely an origin film, but, it doesn't really do, any flashbacks except for maybe, the first opening scene.
Yeah.
And because, he's a vampire. That's all you really need to know. So
you know what vampires are.
Yeah. He's a nice kind of... his origin sort of has, that really nice kind of really simple kind of aspect to it that a lot of other superheroes films don't.
Yeah.
A lot of other superhero films, a lot of them are, driven by loss, whether it's Superman losing his parents on Krypton in a way, sort of, or, Batman losing his parents in Crime Alley. You have to establish those relationships first. With Blade, you really don't need to do that. He does have his whole mom thing, but, it's not even really necessary.
Yeah, that's true. Because he was raised by Whistler for the most part.
Yeah.
All right, so Quinn. Let's talk about Quinn. He's the comic relief, the sidekick to Deacon Frost. Donald Logue is his name. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Out of all the actors in this film, besides Wesley Snipes, he's probably the most not, I don't want to say established, but like he's had like a successful career. He's still making movies.
Yeah, he's done a lot of comic book stuff. You know, he was also in Ghost Rider, and he's in Gotham right now, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bullock.
Yeah, he's just hilarious. I mean, a little manic, but a nice respite from all the seriousness.
I think this was the first time I had seen him, you know, as an actor.
Yeah.
So like he was definitely like an unknown. Now when you see him, it's like, is that Donald Lowe? You know?
Yeah.
But he did a fantastic job with the role.
He did.
I think. He did exactly what he needed to.
I almost think that he was maybe even just playing himself because, I don't know. It feels like something that I would do because like Blade was like, I promise you, you'll be dead by dawn. And he tells that to Deacon Frost. And Quinn is just like, ooh, and just laughs. He's like, I'm gonna be a naughty vampire god. He's so hilarious. He feels out of all the characters in the film, he might be the most relatable, which is interesting, and real feeling. You know, in a movie that is full of like unreal feeling environments and characters, he might be the most real feeling thing.
He definitely seems like out of place in like this world, but like in a good way. You know, it's a nice contrast. When you say that he may be like the most real, I think it's because like he's so, when everyone else is, you know, all the other vampires are, you know, like standing up straight and stuff like that, and just, you know, he's off, you know, talking about how he's gonna be like a naughty god, you know.
Yeah, and I think possibly the only other main character in this that might be worth discussing is Dragon Eddie. He's the leader of the House of Erebus, played by Udo Kier, who I'm pretty convinced is a real life vampire because I think that's
he didn't even need a makeup job for that one.
The only role I've ever seen this guy play is a vampire, and really he's kind of a plot device to exhibit like the old vampire system that
it's someone for you know, Deacon Frost to overthrow.
Yeah. Although you have to admit, it was super easy for him to just kind of like take over this whole elder house of vampires.
It was way too easy.
He just basically kidnapped everybody, and he just executed Dragon Eddie, and then just kind of told the other vampire elders to sit and stay, and they pretty much did what they were told.
I think I remember when I first saw this movie, I thought that Dragon Eddie was he was the main villain.
So I thought that too, but we were young when we saw this.
Yeah.
We were way too young to see it.
Too young to definitely.
We saw this in theaters.
Yeah. I think one more thing about like Deacon Frost that I really liked was the fact that, like, for a lot of films when they want to establish the villain, like the opening scene usually like it's him killing a guy.
Yeah,
you know, like you think of movies like even Wonder Woman. You know, and it's really this kind of like sort of like cheap way, I think, to establish like, hey, this guy's the villain because he kills other people. They didn't do that with Deacon Frost. You know, the first time we saw him, he's at the council and he's being reprimanded. You kind of understand his, like, no one likes to be reprimanded, especially when we first saw it. You know, I think we were like 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like you almost sympathize with him like right off the bat.
Do you?
Yeah.
I thought he was cool, but his coolness is almost unattainable, so I don't relate to him in any way. I don't think. Like I'd like to be that cool, but I don't think I ever sympathized with him personally.
I mean, like I said, when he was like, oh, it takes this risk. Yeah, shut the fuck. I'm like, that's me. That's how I would react, you know?
Yeah.
You know? And if I feel like if I was in his position and I was being met by the Council of Vampires, like, I'd be like, fuck you, bitches. What are you going to do? Kill me? You know?
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. All right. Let's get into the story breakdown. So the movie opens in 1967. We see Blade's mom die as she gives birth to him.
I hate when they give dates.
Yeah,
don't give dates.
It dates the movie basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. In hindsight, that's something that they should have done because Blade would be, so he would have been 30 in 1997. So he was about 31 in this film, but that's 20 years ago. So Blade would be 50 now. Although in the comics he does age slowly. So I don't know if they would.
Not in the movie.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because Whistler says he ages like a normal human, though.
Yeah.
So they got that wrong. But I guess they just had to rationalize Wesley Snipes' age during the time of shooting.
Right.
So after that, the birth scene, we get the title card, and it goes into the blood rave scene where that vampire chick takes that clueless dude who's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
He's another kind of relatable character because you get there and it's like, yeah, all right, it's a party. Yeah, what's going on? And then everybody's being a dick to you and you're like, damn.
Fuck.
And then
I need a drink.
He's like, and the girl that you got there with is like dancing with another girl with their shirts off, And it's like, all right, I'm liking where this is headed. And all of a sudden, they push you away, and it's like, what the hell's going on? That night sucked for that dude, for sure.
Totally. You have to wonder what happened to him too.
He probably went into therapy, I would think, or maybe the vampires took him out because
they probably took him out because Blade just left him there. And the cops came, and the vampires on the cops. The cops, when they showed up, you would think that they would be like really surprised by what they were seeing, but they weren't. So they were definitely in the pocket of the vampires.
Yeah, poor bastard. His reaction to when the blood starts falling
was my reaction
from the sprinkler system.
Yeah.
It was a good reaction. He's like, "What's on this on my hand?" But the first thing that he does is he pokes it with his finger, and then he licks it. And I'm like,
oh, it's horrible.
I mean, after the first time you see the movie, you're confused as he is. But like the second time, you're like, why are you licking it?
If you see anything red,
I just think
drop on you. Do not do that.
All the diseases. It's like the chocolate or poop game. It's like is this blood or strawberry syrup? Blood or strawberry syrup? It's like no matter what version of the game you're playing, you don't test it with your mouth.
What the hell is the chocolate poop game?
Oh, that might be just an inside joke that I play with my friends.
What?
No, it's like if we ever see like a brown stain anywhere or something, we're like chocolate or poop. And then
you guys see way too many brown stains to turn that into a game.
No, it's like a once a year thing. It's still funny.
All right.
But the scene, so the blood starts pouring down and like the music is great and they start beating the shit out of
Music is fantastic in this film.
It really is.
It's really good.
How does it go?
Oh shit, I can't do it. Boom, I fucking suck.
Every time we talk about this movie, Jonathan tries to sing the Blade Blood Rave theme song. And it never sounds anything like it. Let me give it a shot. Since I put you on the spot.
Well, you did it earlier. Oh, fuck off. You practiced.
No, I didn't.
Whatever.
No, I just heard the song a lot.
I know you did.
It doesn't really sound like it either, but anyway, this is where we first see Blade. He's already fully established as a vampire killer. It's a great reveal,
you don't even know he's a vampire by this point,
No, well, you don't know anything about him. You just know that he's really good at killing vampires. And he's well armed. And looks really cool doing what he's doing.
It's a great showcase for all of the different weapons he has.
Yeah, because he starts off with his guns, and then he pulls out the metal stakes, and oh god, it's just the action of this scene is so good. Like he trips, like he's doing like his judo moves. And he's really good at like flipping, making vampires do involuntary backflips. Just sending them flying and like onto the ground, and he's staking them. And he staked that one dude up into the ceiling. And then without even missing a beat, he like spins around and then knocks the other dude,
punches another
into
guy.
the light. It's amazing.
It's just great direction. I do have to say that like the choreography, especially like as the film progresses, like it's definitely slower than I remember. I feel like if they made this movie today, the choreography would have been a lot faster. Like the action would have been, the editing would have been a lot faster. And for this film, they do have some kinetic editing, but like I think there are some times when they just like, the camera just wants to show Wesley Snipes being, a badass martial artist.
Yeah.
But you could tell like his punches aren't really landing and that like it's very choreographed. It's a dance, It doesn't feel authentic.
I refuse to accept any of what you're saying. It's not too slow. Wesley Snipes is the man, and that choreography was awesome. And he was really killing those people because they were really vampires. Anyway. The moment where he takes the fight kind of into that one cylindrical room down a few steps and he pulls out his glaive for the first time.
Yeah.
I remember seeing this in the preview to the movie and he's like, he's talking about Whistler at the time and he says, we have a good arrangement. He makes the weapons, I use them. And we see him throw the glaive and it goes and then he catches it again. I was like, oh, that's cool. But then when they can't show this in the trailer, you watch the movie and you see those vampire guys standing there and their heads fall off. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing I have ever seen with my 12-year-old eyes. I will never see anything that cool again.
I still don't understand the physics of it, but it looked really cool.
It looks really cool. And he has a nice little bit with the sword too, and he stakes Quinn and sets him on fire. And that takes us to the hospital.
You have to wonder why he left Quinn alive.
That's a good question. We know that he was following Quinn.
Yeah.
Because he does follow him later to the hospital. I think he assumed that Quinn, if left alive, would lead him to Deacon Frost, because he says that he's been tracking Deacon Frost for a while.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he was doing. He left him alive to track him. That being said, he is also the reason that
quite a few people
Karen
died.
Jensen's ex-boyfriend
Sort of died. Yeah.
Sort of died, became a zombie guy, whatever. And it's his fault that she got bit and everything, because he didn't get there soon enough.
And then his like reasoning for like when he shows up at the hospital, he's like, came back to finish you off. It's like, dude, you should have just finished him off. It was so fucking easy to kill vampires, you know?
Well, for him, yeah.
Yeah. You know, he was just, creating crispy cinders of them earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say that the vampires in this movie seem so much more formidable than like the vampires that were in Blade Trinity, which were so easy to kill that you could trip over your own 2 feet and end up killing a vampire. I really liked how scary they were in this film. I think Quinn as a charred body was pretty scary.
He was definitely creepy.
When he like jumped out the window and he landed through the ambulance, and that was just scary.
Yeah.
But he ends up seeing Karen on the ground, and she reminds him of his mother. I don't know how he has the memory of his mother, but somehow it reminds her of him.
Right.
And he kidnaps her to treat her, basically takes her back to the safe house that he has with Whistler, and we're introduced to Whistler. And Whistler is hilarious.
Yeah.
But he gives a lot of very valuable exposition regarding vampires and how to kill them. He basically sets the rules for this movie and the Blade universe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like crosses don't hurt them, but they're
Garlic
allergic
does.
to. Yeah,
Silver does.
Yep. A lot of like the whole modern vampire mythology is set in this scene, and I think it's pretty good. He's like, they're stronger, the thirst always wins. If you find yourself being thirsty, no matter how much you've had to drink, shoot yourself.
Right.
Things like that. He injects her with garlic, which was interesting,
And I love how he was like, this is going to hurt a lot. Anyone else would have been, a little bit more gentle, but he's definitely, he's going to tell you, give it to you straight.
Oh yeah, he's a straight shooter for sure. There's a moment while Karen is recovering from the antidote that they gave her. That
it wasn't really an antidote, because she ended up becoming a vampire.
Yeah.
She's the one who created her own antidote, her own cure.
It just kind of delayed the process, I guess.
Yeah.
Because she still had the garlic in her system.
Yeah.
That's preventing the blood cells from changing. During this time, Blade goes. It's an odd little scene because they don't really explain much about it, but it's where he goes to get his serum.
Yeah.
He goes to this a friend chemist,
like an apothecary,
like an apothecary type thing. Yeah, in the middle of New York. Obviously they're friends and they have a personal connection. They don't explain anything about what's going on here, because he's like, Whistler says, I'm developing a resistance, and the other guy says, yeah, I thought that might happen, and then they handshake.
Yeah.
Out of context, which is how it's taken upon first viewing.
You don't know he's a vampire, so you think he's like, is it? Yeah. You
don't know what's going on. Yeah, and it's only later that you kind of start to appreciate what that scene is, and I think it's nice because it shows that Blade does have friends.
Yeah,
it's not just him and Whistler. And also that there's like a network of vampire hunters out there that are kind of like assisting each other.
It's an easy scene to forget because you're not seeing it in the context of Blade being a vampire, so you don't really understand it. So you almost kind of dismiss it initially, I think.
Yeah. I wonder if he is part of like the Night Stalkers, although they don't call themselves the Night Stalkers until Blade Trinity or anything. But that's what like the vampire hunting group call themselves.
Right.
Probably part of the same network of vampire hunters. So from there we go to the House of Erebus meeting where they start discussing Deacon Frost's dangerous club meetings where it's bringing too much attention. They don't like it. They bring him in. He pretty much tells them, up yours.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And then they get back to business and it pisses him off.
What is the purpose of those raves? To like lure people, but it seemed like how many people there were, it seemed like almost all of them were vampires.
Yeah, how much do they all get to feed off that? I assume. Well, I mean, there was a lot of blood coming through the sprinklers. I don't know if that was human blood, right? So yeah, why do they need the guy there? Is it just to have fun? Is it because vampires thrive on hunting and killing things? Are they not satisfied with just drinking blood from a sprinkler or something?
Who knows? It does seem reckless of Deacon Frost, though. I don't know.
It does. I never really thought about that.
Sort of, not necessarily, maybe considering his attitude towards humans to begin with, and the whole like arrangement that they say they have with between the vampires
and
the humans. But still, like, I guess Deacon Frost just likes to party.
He just doesn't give a shit. Like, his whole thing is he just wants to have fun and drink human blood.
Yeah.
And like this whole power struggle that he has with the House of Erebus is kind of his means of fulfilling that goal, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
She's like, whatever, I do what I want.
So Karen leaves their hideout and she goes back to her apartment with the advice to leave town because they're going to come after her because she knows that they exist. She gets a visit from a police officer who turns out to be a familiar, of Deacon Frost, a familiar being a human that is promised to be turned into a vampire later if they do the vampire's bidding.
Yeah.
It was a great scene.
It's good plot progression.
Good plot progression.
You know, it's David Goyer, he's a really good writer for the most part. I mean, you know, after this he, of course went on to write, like Batman Begins and, The Man of Steel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think he's really good with his plotting.
He's a better writer than he is a director.
For sure.
Absolutely. But it really, you're not even really sure where the story is going at this point, but it progresses nicely. Karen's not alone for long. Blade rescues her.
Right.
And next thing you know, we're at the archive place, the club with the Japanese girls singing, and then he beats up the familiar, and they go into the fridge or the freezer of the kitchen, and they go down some steps, and they're in the archive, and they meet this bizarre vampire.
I totally forgot about this scene.
He's like this super obese vampire, and he looks like a sumo wrestler almost, but like 10 times the size of a normal one. And
what the hell is he eating? He's a vampire.
I
Do
don't
they just bring him bodies or blood or something?
I think they do.
It's weird because I guess he's just immortal, so he's just not going to die from a heart attack.
I think I read in some behind the scenes something like on Wikipedia. I can't remember where I read this, but he preferred to drink children blood. That was his whole thing.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah. So I didn't feel sorry for him at all when Karen's like, sizzling him to death. Because he definitely deserved it. He was a fucking asshole. I don't know what role he had in terms of Frost's plan, but he had something to do with the translation.
Yeah, he was helping out with the translation.
La Magra that Frost was working on. He was deciphering these old vampiric texts in which the language was a dead language and it was lost to time and nobody knew what it said. But he was figuring it out, and it turns out to be the ritual of La Magra, which awakens the blood god.
Was that the whole book? What was it called? The Book of
Erebus.
Like, after this whole ordeal, Blade gives Whistler, like, a page from the Book of Erebus.
A corner of a page.
From that, like, for it being a dead language, Whistler was able to translate it pretty quickly. So think about the blood god.
Well, he also had a disc. He also got the disc.
Yeah, he gave him the disc and the paper simultaneously, and Whistler was like, "Oh, fucking La Magra, I know this shit."
I think he was able to read the words La Magra.
Oh. And it's a dead language. How could you read it?
Well, it's like Latin is a dead language, but you can still read Latin. I mean...
But why would they have trouble translating it then?
Because they don't know what it means, but they know how to pronounce it.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
That's what I'm guessing. I don't know, man. After the whole Pearl scene... which was weird.
Gross,
they go into the archive and they get attacked. They get ambushed by Frost's team who are under orders to take him alive. And that leads to a cool scene where Whistler ends up swooping in and saving the day. He blows up one of the walls next to the subway and they escape through the subway tunnel. And
that was badass.
That scene was just jam-packed to the gills with adrenaline. It was really cool and kinetic.
I really like Donald Logue's performance too as Quinn.
Yeah.
Just when he's like, saying like, "Come to think of it, Blade, I owe you two." Just his relationship with Blade.
Yeah.
It was definitely
You think I'll ever play piano again? In reference to his chopped off arm.
right.
Yeah, they had an interesting relationship for sure. Yeah, it was a nice little
You
dynamic.
could definitely see how pissed off Donald Logue was.
Yes.
Like, he's just really irritated by Blade. And the fact that Deacon Frost, wanted him alive.
That,
Again, you could see how it just
that
pissed him off.
definitely
He's like,
infuriated him.
What? Whoa, what are you talking about?
The train fight, right after the train fight, we see Blade take his serum for the second time, actually. We're not sure what's going on the first time, but the second time, it becomes clear that, like, he's part
The
vampire.
reason he's superhuman is because the reason he's able to do something like hold on to a speeding subway is because he's part vampire.
Yeah. And she even says, "You're one of them, aren't you?" And he's like, "No, I'm something else." At this point, this is where we learn Blade's origins. We get the exposition from Whistler where it says that Blade's mom was bitten by a vampire while she was pregnant. If people know this information, though, you would assume that they'd be biting a lot of pregnant women and then taking the kids as soldiers.
If they wanted more daywalkers, just bite pregnant women, then raise the kid.
It's kind of a plot hole.
It is.
You'd have to assume that there's maybe
especially if they
need
especially if Frost needs daywalker blood.
Yeah, exactly. We learn what his powers are. He has, he's able to regenerate, and he's strong and fast. And there's a nice little moment there, actually, with Wesley Snipes. He has a nice acting moment where you could feel the guilt that he has about, drinking blood when he was younger and things like that. He doesn't feel like a hero, even though he is.
And how he enjoys killing vampires because he feels like it brings him closer to avenging his mother, but also, being a part of a normal world, because that means one less vampire to have to deal with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Blade leaves at this point, and he gets confronted by Deacon Frost, who offers Blade to join them in really a disguised effort to get him so that he could take his blood for the La Magra ritual.
Right.
That back and forth interplay between those two at that scene is really tense. It's really tense. It's a good bit of dialogue.
It's a great piece of cinema.
Yeah,
I think
it's a tense scene. Like, it's not often you get these like face to face moments, in the middle of Act 2 between the hero and the villain, and this is maybe one of the best examples of that.
He's definitely playing like a Lucifer kind of like tempter kind of archetype there.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
It did throw me off initially when he was out in the sunlight. The way they describe it as a sunblock, it always kind of bugged me. Because, just thinking, they're probably not too far off from becoming daywalkers themselves. Just give it a few years of, some sunblock research and development.
Yeah, SPF 3000.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, we do see the sunblock appear in one scene prior to this, and that's when they execute Dragon Eddie.
Yeah,
which was a lot more graphic and brutal than I remember it being.
For sure.
You see, all of his internal organs explode.
Yeah,
and exposed and everything.
His skin just rip away and fall away. It's and
crazy.
Burn. I still don't understand why Deacon Frost was just so much more motivated than the rest of the council. It's why weren't they trying to translate the book? He's a new vampire. They're they were born vampires, and I guess they were born into this world of vampire privilege. They didn't have to do anything other than just adhere to the treaties.
It's possible that they were just comfortable with the system that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Huh. And he wasn't being. He probably came from something lesser when he became a vampire. He became something that he felt was more, and he craved the further acquisition of power. That's how I prefer to see it, I think.
Yeah, that's probably dead on.
Yeah. So while Blade's gone, actually before he leaves, Karen develops the EDTA weapon, which is awesome. But while he's gone,
it's crucial to the film, to the end of the film.
I know, yeah, it's crazy.
So crucial. If you didn't make that, I don't know what would have happened.
We'd all become vampires. We'd be
would
vampires
we, though?
right now.
Would we though? I don't know.
So while Blade's gone, that's when she develops the cure, basically. She finishes the cure, she cures herself. And she states that the cure probably won't work on someone like Blade, who was born a vampire. Mm-hmm. But it's at this moment that they're attacked. Pretty much, I guess, right after running away from Blade, Deacon Frost comes back and attacks the hideout where he curb stomps Whistler. And the scene with Whistler saying goodbye, basically, to Blade. The first time I saw it, I thought they were just being assholes to each other. And it's not until like when I was older that I picked up on the subtleties of the performances at that moment. And you realize how much is being left unsaid.
They care for each other.
They do definitely care about each other.
You know, Whistler's just trying to push Blade away because he doesn't
want him to see him die. Yeah.
Because he cares for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many layers that you don't understand until you become more mature.
Yeah, definitely. And Blade takes it really hard. You know, he goes and you can tell he kind of goes into he goes and meditates and
shut off mode.
Yeah, he shuts himself off. And next time you see him, he's an absolute killing machine.
He knows that Deacon wants him. He knows that Deacon Frost did this, you know, to set up a trap.
Yeah. But he doesn't care because he's out for revenge.
He's out for revenge.
Yeah. And he goes out and he's killing people like the guy. He's killing people in the lobby scene that reminds me a lot of The Matrix. It inspired The Matrix for sure. But
even the elevator scene from earlier when they were going into the archives.
Oh yeah, that too. The way they get into the elevator.
Yeah.
He kills the guy who's like, I just work for them. And at that point, he just doesn't even care. Yeah. He's out for revenge because they killed his dad, essentially. Yeah. There's a neat little action beat after that where he uses EDTA for the first time on those two vampires in the hallway. Yeah. To me, that was horrifying as a kid.
Yeah, it was.
And now it's just funny to me because I can imagine 12-year-old me watching that scene being horrified and laughing at my 12-year-old self. Because it is horrifying.
Huge fountains of blood and gore. And
I don't know how they did the special effects for that. I guess it was CGI. But it has a weird kinetic movement to it. Like it's speed ramped CGI.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. But it's pretty good. And at that point, he meets his mom. He realizes that she's still alive. And that Deacon Frost is the one that turned her. And that Deacon Frost is the vampire that Blade has been looking for his entire life.
Which is a crazy twist.
Yeah, it was a good twist.
This guy is almost essentially in a way like his father, you know?
Yeah.
Helped make him half of what he is. Mm-hmm. And the fact that both of his parents in sort of a way are now the bad guys, it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it is. But awesome. So fascinating.
Not that Blade thinks of him as his father in any way, but he is.
For sure. You can after a fashion.
Yeah.
You could say that. So Blade ends up getting tased and taken to the Temple of Eternal Night where they're going to perform the Lamagro ritual. At this point, Blade is so beaten up that he's struggling because he's feeling the thirst. When he gets
weaker,
when he gets weak, he gets thirsty,
right.
And drinking blood helps him regain his strength and heal and everything like that. They put Blade in this tomb
with razors,
this coffin with razors. They take his blood and they perform the ritual.
The scene where his mom is putting him into that thing was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, she gets a little bit too close with him. She's
weird.
She's not a good person.
It's why even put that in the film?
I don't know. It seemed like she was attracted to him.
Just to make people uncomfortable?
I think they do it to help justify Blade killing his mom. Because if she was a nice lady, even if she was a vampire, it may be hard to see Blade killing her. But the fact that she was just such a fucking weirdo, it made it a little bit more digestible, I think.
Yeah.
In hindsight. The action scene that happens after Blade drinks Karen's blood.
And that scene was different than from what I remember as a kid. Because, he's feeding on her. And I always remember her thinking, stop.
Yeah.
And she's, saying stop. And I'm, just watching him, no means no.
Yeah. It felt a little non-consensual, but the way I interpreted it was that he was just overcome by his bloodlust.
Thirst, yeah.
By his thirst.
Yeah.
And then we watched the film a couple days ago with the subtitles on, and I guess she's saying,
don't stop.
Don't stop. She's encouraging him to keep drinking her blood. I still don't buy it. No matter how many times those subtitles said don't stop, I never heard the word don't.
No. I almost wonder if they added that in
just to make it seem less rapey.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean,
you're right, because I was listening to it after the first time, because she says it several times, and I never heard don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say exactly what happens there.
It is more interesting, I guess, in a way, if it's not necessarily consensual, because, he has to like overcome that willpower,
It really shows the dark side of the character.
Yeah, for sure, that you don't really see. Or this is like really the only time you see that.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder that, hey, Blade is a vampire.
Yeah. So while as non-consensual it may be and kind of creepy, the fact that he keeps drinking her blood, I think it makes for a more interesting moment.
Yeah.
Because you see,
and she seems she recovers nicely for losing so much blood.
She really does. I mean, she takes the fight back to the vampires and she ends up killing Mercury, that the vampire that's all dressed in white.
Yeah.
And everything with a vampire mace.
She was annoying. Holy cow, I hated that character.
Yeah, she was annoying. That's why we didn't talk about her. So the action scene that happens after he drinks her blood is fantastic. The music is great. He goes on a full-on kung fu spree, kicking vampire ass.
Well, this is where I'm talking about, where like it feels like it slowed down a little bit, so you could see all the details.
Oh,
and it's just like it's well lit. The cinematography on this, it's not as like high contrast as I remember it being. I just noticed that as I was watching it, but yeah, it definitely, again, it feels choreographed.
It's fun though. I don't know, like it's choreographed, but it also looks like he's really actually beating up those stunt guys.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
he might be.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. For me, honestly, this film does kind of fall apart in this final act
a little bit.
This whole ritual to create La Magra, like
it's kind of weird how it happens.
We were promised, like, he was saying La Magra's a fucking storm, it's a hurricane, and everyone's going to be turned into a vampire.
It doesn't matter who's
not
pure
what
blood
happened.
Or is that. Initially, that was what was supposed to happen. He was like this, like a blood storm, and like I don't know if you saw the deleted scenes for Blade, but La Magra is supposed to be this swirling like tornado of blood, and Blade like breaks open the EDTA capsules and it gets into it, and that's how he dies. But it didn't test well with audiences, mainly because the special effects were horrendous. They were so bad.
And also, what happens to Deacon Frost?
He is the Bloodstorm, basically.
So you never get a final fight between him and Blade?
No. That's what audiences wanted. So they pushed the release date of this film by like half a year after this screened to add that final fight scene where Deacon Frost has a sword and they sword fight at the end.
But the thing is, I mean, I guess it's a cool fight scene, especially like when they're like rapid fire, just like, swinging their blades, and it's like close up. You just see their faces and just these like blades slashing across the screen.
Yeah, it's cool.
But other than that, like I never was once convinced that Deacon Frost could hold his own against Blade.
It's like, did La Magra give him kung fu powers?
Right?
It's interesting.
Where he could do flips and shit, you know?
Yeah. He kind of became all of a sudden this huge physical threat.
And he was a threat in the sense for Blade, at least, but not for the rest of the world. You kind of lost your stakes with that.
A little bit. Unless he had some powers that weren't displayed. Like maybe he could like shoot his blood out and convert people or something.
No. Horrible.
But he was definitely immune to Blade's weapons because he gets chopped in half and he's able to reconnect his body and everything. It was
and
cool.
Blade's like, just mouths, what the fuck?
What do you call that power? Like, what is that? You've never seen that anywhere ever. That type of power. Maybe Lobo has that.
That's what I was just gonna say. Lobo's probably the closest.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Like hyper
regeneration, something.
That's what I'm calling it.
It's a good word. We'll call it that. Well, you know what part I didn't want to mention that I wanted to mention was when he kills Quinn. How he has that cool like silver razor wire that he pulls from his belt.
Yeah, he only used that once in the entire film.
It's such a cool weapon, but he just spins around and he's so smooth. And they never explain it in the movie, but the reason why Blade always wears sunglasses is because being a half vampire, his eyes are very sensitive to light. Mm-hmm. And I think in the movies I guess we just assume that he wears sunglasses because he thinks they're cool.
Shouldn't all the vampires be wearing sunglasses? Like even Deacon Frost?
Yeah.
Especially like when he's out in the sun wearing the sunscreen?
Yeah, you would think. It's not a perfect film. I mean, it has a lot going for it and it was hugely influential, but it's not perfect. It definitely has its faults, but it is so well made that I give it 4 stars out of 5. I think you have to give it props. You have to give it its due for what it brought to the golden age of superhero films. What we're living in right now.
Yeah.
What do you give it?
I give it four stars as well. The acting is really good. The story is really good. Even the faults they have at the very end, it was still really enjoyable. I still walked out of the theater like really happy with the film.
Yeah. I forgot to mention at the very end we get a kind of an epilogue in Moscow.
Yeah,
that was just like a perfect capper, because it finished with great music. It finished with a great Wesley Snipes pose. It was just a nice little moment. Prior to that, in the deleted scenes when La Magra was supposed to be this cloud, apparently like everyone in like a mile radius had turned into a vampire. And in the original ending for this film, he comes out of the shaft at the top of the building. He gets onto the roof of the building, and he sees Morbius for the first time. And that was the original ending for this film. And Morbius was it was really hard to see him, but he was like kind of dressed in tattered clothing and had just like flowing. It was like his clothes were kind of like flowing in the wind. It was all brown though, kind of. He didn't look like the bluish reddish figure from the comics. But that was an interesting ending that they eventually decided not to ever introduce Morbius into the Blade franchise, which was interesting.
Huh. Wait, why would Morbius have been there to begin with? Was he turned by the Blood God?
That's what they're saying, yeah. He was a guy who was turned by the Blood God. And so,
how would you know he was Morbius?
Because that's what he was referred to as. You wouldn't know watching the movie, but that's what they referred to him as in the commentary for the deleted scenes. So.
Who played Morbius?
Uncredited.
Interesting.
You didn't even see his face. You just saw his silhouette for the most part.
Well, that's dumb.
He was in the distance. So
yeah, that doesn't sound like a good ending.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for the review. If you haven't seen this movie in a while, it holds up. I mean, it's 20 years ago, but it's still enjoyable. Very much enjoyable.
It doesn't feel like it was 20 years ago.
I know, right?
But then again, 1998 doesn't feel 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe it could have been made like 10 years ago, maybe.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it was made 10 years ago. Well, no. Geez, because Iron Man came out 10 years ago. Wow.
Oh, gosh.
What's happening?
Seriously.
It holds up. Watch it again if you ever get a chance, because it's really good. I like it a lot. 4 stars.
4 stars.
That brings us to the end of this review. Go ahead and subscribe to us on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and tell all your friends and all your friends' friends. You may not know them, but you should tell them. Tell your parents, tell your children, and the rest of your family and extended family about the show.
Just set up a big group viewing of Blade, because why not?
You can find us on social media at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook by doing a search for Dynamic Duel Podcast. You can email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com, and definitely reach out to us if you have an answer to the question of the week, which was, what was the question of the week?
What original series would you like DC to develop next for the upcoming DC streaming service?
That's right. And if you go to dynamicduel.com, check us out at TeePublic by clicking on the merch link at that site, and you'll see a bunch of sweet-ass t-shirt designs that Jonathan and I designed ourselves. And they come in both blue and red, in case you have
There's Marvel shirts and there's DC shirts.
Yes. The Marvel shirts are outselling the DC shirts.
Oh, gosh.
So
we can't let that happen.
I just want to make that statement and leave it at that. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Next week, still in preparation for the Black Panther movie that's coming out, we're going to be doing a duel between Black Panther and
Black Manta.
Black Manta, who is Aquaman's villain.
And he has a movie. He'll be in a movie coming out later this year, Aquaman.
Yeah, he's a tech bad guy.
He's a stabby kind of guy with a really cool suit and really cool gadgets and stuff like that. So I think it's a good matchup.
And really good at toppling whole nations.
Oh, for sure.
Be it underwater or perhaps in the heart of Africa.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out next week. So go ahead and tune in then. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Up and away.
True believers.